and talking about agency. You know, we can have the best of intentions and think we're helping and saying the right thing, but we get undesirable results because we are not really relating to the other person. Understanding agency and honoring others' agency is vital to good relationships. When we're controlling, we are not honoring their agency. Others are doing what they know. If they knew differently, they would do differently. So we have to accept them for who they are and where they are. And realize the problem with a lot of people is that they don't share their feelings or their thoughts. And what can really add to that is the controller. And when we're controlling others, they withdraw their love, they get resentful and rebellious, and they have anger. And then the controller will use force and threats to try to control. And one thing, they're always telling them what they're doing wrong. If we would just change to telling them what they're doing right, behavior would change. I was a counselor, and I would work with families. And when I worked with families, I would talk to the youth first and get his opinion. And I worked for youth court, so it was first-time offenders, delinquents. And I would want to know where they were coming from. And this one young man told me, he said, I never do anything right. Everything I do is wrong. And so I just don't even want to talk to my parents anymore. He said, if I disagree with my parents, I get ready for a real debate. So I just give up and don't talk to them. That's what controlling does. This one young man was so discouraged that I told his parents, I said, do not, for 1 week, I'm asking you not to tell him anything he does wrong. I want you to look at what he does right and comment on that. And I said, now just for a week, and then we'll meet back and decide what to do. And I said, help each other so that you tell what he's doing right. And you're going to have to hunt for things, but do it. They came back in a week, and that young man was a different young man, because finally his parents was telling him what he did right. When we are with a controller, we don't think for ourselves. We don't have ideas for ourselves. We get angry, and the put-downs make us feel like we're not worth very much. And then reminders are really detrimental to a relationship. I had this one young man, he was a first-time offender. They lived in a trailer house, and so it was small. The mother wanted that garbage taken out every day. And so she would start reminding him and nagging him the minute he came home from school. And he would not do it. He'd just put it off. And so then he started rebelling in other ways. So during our counseling session, I asked this young man if he could take the garbage out by 7 o'clock. And he said yes, he could, but we came up with consequences. And that's how people change, if they have consequences for bad behavior. And then there would be consequences for good behavior. And I said, what would you like your mother to do for you if you, for this 1 week, would take the garbage out by 7 o'clock? And he said, well, make me a batch of chocolate chip cookies. And if he didn't do it, he had to go into his bedroom, could not watch TV, and he had to do his homework or read a book. And both agreed to it, but then this young man said, well, she can't remind me. Do you know why he was resentful about that? Because when she reminded him, it became her accomplishment, not his. So she could not remind him at all. If he didn't do it, he just had to stay in his bedroom the rest of the evening. And I said, now we need to give the mother a consequence if she reminds you. Oh, he was so happy. He said, I'm all for that. And the consequence that we worked out was that he had to make a batch of chocolate chip cookies, and it was all his. But do you know, she had to make 2 batches of chocolate chip cookies because that was such a habit. And so I asked her, I said, why are you reminding him? And says, well, I don't want him to suffer the consequence. And so we had a talk on he needs to suffer the consequence so he can learn to be responsible. That made a lot of difference in that young man's attitude. And the mother learned how important it was not to give reminders, because he needed that sense of accomplishment for taking out the garbage. You know, relationships can change, and they can change for the better by the choices that we all make. And when we're working with teenagers, we have to give them choices. And there has to be consequences if they don't do them. But they have to be involved in what the consequences would be. So if we will communicate, we can bind together rather than drive our relationships apart. We can build our relationships on love and acceptance rather than belittling. Have compassion for each other rather than contention. And respect rather than ridicule. Counsel with them, talk with them, share feelings rather than criticize. To make choices, we need the knowledge, and that's what these classes can do for you, so that you can make good choices and have loving relationships.